First of all, my name is Brent Pike. I'm the owner of Pike Gear, the Upland Clothing Hunting Company, or the Upland Clothing Hunting Company, whatever the hell you want to call it. And I've done a fair amount of traveling around the country with my bird dogs, and Mike wanted me to just kind of do a little talk today and kind of tell people kind of how I have my truck set up, some various things I have in my truck. And if anybody that knows me will know that I'm a big gear guy, so I love gadgets and stuff like that. Always, even before I got into bird hunting, I always liked gadgets. So I've got lots of crap in my truck, but most of the stuff I have in my truck is stuff that I've either needed or I've seen somebody else that is used over time and found it to be useful. If I don't use it, I get rid of it. But I thought this might be a good opportunity to kind of share with you guys what I do in my truck and when I'm traveling with my bird dogs. And if you haven't done a lot of traveling, particularly outside the state, there's a lot of little pitfalls you can run into and various areas that you should know about. So with that, I'm just going to kind of show you kind of some of the stuff I keep in my truck, and we can certainly open up to a Q&A afterwards if there's any questions folks might have. But I guess I'm just going to start out with hydration for my dogs. So I always bring like a 5-gallon jug. I found this cool little pump on Amazon. I tell you what, this thing is the cat's meow for, you can leave it in your truck. You're not having to tip a big water jug up. You just hit a little button and you can fill your dog's water bowls up. It's an amazing little thing, and it really saves on water conservation for you. Because I mean, when you're traveling out west and things like that, a lot of times water is a super premium item. I mean, whether you're in the field or in your truck, you don't want to run out of water. So having something like that, you're not wasting a lot of water. You can put a little bit of water in the dog's bowl. If they need more, you can put a little more in there, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one of the things I absolutely keep in the back of my truck. For any of you folks that been hunting a lot, you know that having an extra pair of socks in the truck it can be a game changer. If your feet are sweaty or cold or just tired throughout the day, taking your boots off at lunchtime, putting on a pair of Crocs or something like that, walking around while you're eating, and then throw on a fresh pair of socks and your boots, it's like getting a new pair of feet. It's an amazing experience to get your feet back in good shape. And I always wear merino wool socks. I'm a big, huge fan of merino wool on a lot of levels. They don't smell. You can literally wear those things for a week. So I mean, if you're like in a really tight or a crunch space where all the backpack elk hunters and stuff like that, they wear merino wool underwear, socks, t-shirts, you name it, because it just does not retain odor. It's got some natural antimicrobials in it. So you can, if you're crunched for space, bring a couple merino wool t-shirts, a couple merino wool underwear, socks, et cetera, and you can, kind of reduce all the garbage that you're bringing along on your trips. I always keep some snacks in the back of my truck, just for myself. I'm not a big guy of feed my dogs midday. I don't feel that that's necessary or, important to the dogs at all, but, we're always worried about feeding our dogs, giving them water and things like that when we're out in the field, but a lot of times we neglect ourselves. So make sure you've got, Gatorade or, Hydrate and Recover from Wilderness Athlete is one of my favorites, Prime, different things, or even just good old-fashioned water. Keeping yourself hydrated on it, especially in these long trips where, most of us in Michigan, we're weekend warriors. We're lucky if we get a, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and that's kind of our hunting trip. And then you go out west and you're out there for 5 days. That's a long time on your body, and it's tough on the dogs too. So make sure you're keeping yourself hydrated throughout the day. First thing I always do when I get back to the truck is grab a bottle of water, drink that up, and just try to stay hydrated throughout the day. Because I mean, even if it's cool out, you don't feel like you're perspiring that much. You're not really losing a whole lot, but you're losing a lot more than you think you are when you're trudging through the woods. Some of the things that I've really learned over the years is being over-prepared for my dogs. So we went out to Arizona this past winter, and I brought these crappy Cordura dog boots for my dogs, and I thought, these would be great. I've used them out in Oklahoma and different places. They're great for sandburrs and things like that. They do a nice job of just, kind of protecting the dog's feet, and they were terrible. The dogs literally ran right through that 1,000-denier Cordura on their first run. They would just, get holes in them, and they'd throw boots and all this other stuff, and I'd wrap them and do all this other stuff. And I ran into a local out there, and he's like, you got to use inner tube tires. So he cuts these inner tube tires up. He makes his own little dog boots, and you wrap it. And we've got a video on YouTube for you guys to check out if you want to see it. But you wrap the dog's foot in vet wrap, put this inner tube over it, and then wrap it with duct tape. And the nice thing is it's open in the bottom, so their toenails are still out, so they can still grab in some of those rocky surfaces. And if there's any water or sand, it all kind of actually comes out of the boot. These things, and I've bought the Lewis dog boots before, and they're crazy expensive and they're crazy hard to put on, and the dogs throw them, and they're just, amazingly enough, the cheap inner tube tire is the easiest and cheapest way and best way to protect your dog's feet in those areas. I mean, we think the grouse woods are tough, and I think the grouse woods are tougher on humans than they are on the dogs. The woods are always soft, and there's always moisture on the ground. The dog, you feel the dog's feet, they're nice and soft at the end of the season. No matter how hard you run them, you just can't get into what gravel and sand and shale and all that rocky stuff does to dog's feet when you're out west. It's brutal on their feet. So make sure, when you're going out west, I put some of that tough feet on my dog's feet. I keep dog boots on, and the big key is don't put dog boots on after it's too late. And that's something, all my dogs will be fine. And sure enough, the first day a dog blows a pad, and you're like, oh my gosh, they'll keep hunting. It's not, they're tough, but if you can prevent that stuff from the dogs, you're gonna keep your dogs a lot fresher, you're gonna feel better about your dogs, et cetera. So don't wait to do that preventative maintenance on the dogs. Put the boots on them the first time you're out there, and if you find, they throw a boot and you say, oh, that pad's fine, all right, maybe you take another one off, but the front feet in particular really get beat up on dogs out west. That's, at least in my experience in Montana and Arizona, for sure. Not sure how many of you guys have ever had a dog get into a skunk. So I only had it happen one time, and I was lucky I was prepared. So you guys probably all heard about the hydrogen peroxide, Dawn dish soap, and baking soda trick. Keep a little bowl, keep some rubber gloves in your truck. You can clean a dog up pretty darn quick with this little combination. And I buy fresh stuff the soap is fine, but I buy fresh baking soda and fresh hydrogen peroxide every year. It's, for $2, it will save your marriage.
I found something else that worked really well too, just kind of by accident, because I didn't have some of that stuff at home. And use deer hunters use a lot. It's a body wash that's scent free.
Okay.
It works.
Really?
Yeah, it does.
That's good to know. Oh, one thing again on the dish soap, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I've heard that you want to use Dawn as opposed to a lot of other ones, because Dawn has really good grease fighting properties. So the hydrogen peroxide and baking soda are basically to neutralize the smell. If you read a lot of the instructions, they'll say, add water and make this soapy. I just make a paste. I make a really thick, globby paste and just put it in there and just coat the dogs in it and leave it on them for a few minutes and try to find a pond, or, that's the nice thing about having something with a pump on it with water. You can kind of hose that dog down, but just let it sit on it for quite some time, and that really does a nice job of keeping them. Then I typically will rinse them, do it again, and then I've only had it happen one time, but it was in it. Yes. Yeah, and of course we were driving a Suburban, so we had the dog in the car on the way back from Kansas. So first aid kit, everybody's got their own little bits that they want to have in their first aid kit. I'd be happy to show people what I keep in mind, but a couple things that you always want to keep in your truck. Have you guys heard of Endosorb? It's basically kaopectate for dogs. It's like these chalky tablets, and everybody that's ever been on a road trip, dogs drink some nasty water or something like that, and they crap in their kennel, and it's just, I bet I've had it happen a half a dozen times where I've gotten a dog that's got some intestinal thing when on the road, and it's obviously not fun to deal with. But if you can get that Endosorb into them, and I also carry some metronidazole, which again is a prescription antibiotic. Most of your vets will give you that stuff for road trips. Get that into the dog, and usually they're, you might not even have a next accident out of them with that Endosorb. So it's like I said, I think you can just use regular kaopectate if you will, but this stuff seems to work really well, and the dogs actually don't mind eating it a lot of times. You don't have to shove it down their throat. You can just give it to them, and they'll eat it. So always keep that in the truck for me. One thing, a friend of mine, one of Joe Swanky's good buddies, Steve Rodock, a good friend of ours, showed me a couple years ago is these little dog bowls. And then you just get some, two-way clips and clip them onto the dog's kennel. And I was amazed at how much water my dogs would drink overnight. And, literally those bowls would be empty the next morning. And the dog's performance was significantly better, especially, again, you go from Michigan to out west, it is dry, super, super dry out there. And those dogs are not acclimated to that stuff. So being able to keep your dog hydrated throughout that trip is super important. One pro tip is make sure you take those out before you start driving. Certainly, I've not done that a few times. And I mean, it's water. It's not the end of the world, but it's not necessarily what you're looking for. We talk a lot about when we're traveling with dogs, and where do you stop to let your dogs out? A lot of people, I just stop at a restaurant. I stop at a gas station. Well, so does everybody else. And guess what that is? There's people that don't give two rat's rear ends about their dogs, or they have no idea about parvo and vaccinations, and so you're bringing your dog into literally a disease-infested area possibly. So what I always look for banks. Typically, I'm traveling at night, on weekends, and banks are great. They've got a lot of stakes. This is a great little leash I got from Gun Dog Supply. So it's a leash, but you can also wrap it around a tree or a post or something like that. So I've got anywhere from 3 to 4 dogs I travel with at a time, and so I can put all the dogs out and let them do their business. And this is a nice little addition to have in the back of your truck for those dogs. The second best thing is if you're out west, have your co-companion, where's a off-road, and get off on some 2-track and just let them dogs run around for 5 minutes and, just really stretch their legs out. And they typically evacuate much better that way than just, tying them off. I mean, a lot of my dogs won't even poop when I'm tying them off like this, but you let them run around for a few minutes and they'll definitely eliminate for you. In Michigan here, we're pretty lucky as far as what we have to worry about as far as critters. I mean, yeah, we've got wolves, but, bird dogs and wolves don't typically tend to be a huge problem. We got porcupines. Obviously, that's an issue. And, I've been surprised at how many porcupines. I actually run into more porcupines out west than I do in Michigan, which is, it was bizarre to me. I'm like, well, I thought these things were like woods critters, but, I find them in plum thickets and quail hunting, and they're all over the place. So again, if you know your dogs particularly have a propensity for porcupines, make sure you keep a pair of hemostats in your bag. I typically will just get a dog between my legs like this, and I just start pulling. I keep leather gloves on, and I just start pulling the quills. And if they got some deep in their throat, my hunting partner will help me, and we'll hold the dog down and get what we can. If we have to go to the vet, you got to go to the vet. I've only had to bring a dog to a vet one time, so knock on wood. Hopefully that's a trend that will continue. Snakes, when you're hunting, again, we're pretty lucky here in Michigan. Yeah, we got the Michigan rattler, but we just don't really run into them in the North Grouse Woods too much. I mean, I know it can happen, but it's a rarity. Now, when you're going out west, it's something to be very prepared for. I mean, most of the places where we're hunting, in early fall, early winter, the snakes are going to be, prairie rattlers, which, can they kill a dog? Absolutely, but they're not typically, they're going to make a dog sick. I was just reading an article this morning from a vet, and, he carries around liquid Benadryl actually in his pack. So if a dog, gets bit by a snake, I think it's 1 teaspoon per 12.5 pounds that he'll give a dog. And, obviously you want to get them to the vet as soon as possible. The biggest concern with a snake is if it bites actually their tongue. It's not even so much their nose or anything like that, their tongue, because that will actually, get that anaphylactic area, and their throats will swell up, and that's where you can get the problem with the breathing and stuff like that. It's typically not like a neurotoxin that's going to kill the dog. It's a breathing problem that they're going to have. So obviously, get that Benadryl in them, get them to the vet as quick as possible, and they're probably going to give them some antibiotics, put some fluids in them. And I've had a lot of buddies that dogs have been struck by snakes, and they're hunting the next day. So it's, don't freak out. You don't, just get your dog back to the truck as quick as possible, and get them to the vet. Leads me to the other point. When you're going to out west or wherever you're going, have a list of the vets in that area. It's nice to have that as opposed to, yeah, you can Google. I mean, we're pretty lucky nowadays. If you forget, it's not the end of the world. But as you know, a lot of times cell service is pretty spotty, so you just got to start driving. And if you got that number already in your phone, you're going to feel a lot more confident that you can get to the right spot at the right time and know if there's an emergency vet. I mean, of course, things never happen at noon on a Monday, right? It always happens at 7 o'clock on a Sunday night when you're traveling. At least in my cases. One of the things that we do need to be concerned about is traps. I always carry a couple zip ties in my bag. And if your dog gets into a conibear trap, that's obviously a dangerous one. The footholds are it's a 10-second release, and your dog's good to go. A conibear around a dog's neck, particularly if you guys if you got a small Brittany or a Cocker or something that's a little bit smaller like that, those Conibears, it can kill them instantly. Typically, you got a little bit of time there, so you can. Again, we've got a video on YouTube where you can show how the one I typically hear in my bag is a little bit longer. You can actually run the zip tie through that trap, and you can get that thing opened up. And you see there's videos out there with shoestrings and all. It's like it's gonna be too late by then. I mean, you need to be able to get this thing on there and get that get that off that dog's neck sooner rather than later if you want to save your dog. So that's something that knock on wood, again, I haven't had any issues with. Typically, trapping season here in Michigan doesn't really get kicked off until bird season's kind of winding down in a lot of the areas that I hunt. So it hasn't been an issue, but you never know. You find some knucklehead that has an illegal conibear trap on public land early season, or they left it from the year before, and your dog gets into it. It can spell trouble for you. Yeah.
To reiterate, that would be an illegal trap.
It would be an illegal trap. Yeah. They're supposed to be 6 feet off the ground and in a bucket or something like that. But and most trappers are probably some of the most ethical people you ever meet, because they know that they walk a fine line, and they're concerned about that stuff. But again, somebody might have a problem raccoon next to their property. They don't care, and they want to get rid of it. And so hopefully your dog. In certain places out west, I don't know what the rules are, in every state, but certain places you can have land conibear traps on the ground. So again, check the local regulations on that stuff. Accommodations, there's lots of different things. Obviously, there's hotels, you got VRBO, you got Airbnb, you got camping, all that good stuff. So how many people have taken a big venture out west? Fair number of you. So, one thing I like doing is I do like, when I get a group of guys, I like doing the VRBO. I like being able to cook my own meals. I like being able to, talk with a local owner of a house. And, a lot of times they can tell you, oh, yeah, we got birds on this property, or, they might know people that can kind of help you out. So that's kind of my thing. That being said, I do think it's super important when you're visiting these local towns is to stop at the gas station and grab a bottle of water, grab a candy bar there, stop at the local restaurant for dinner and grab a beer or whatnot. Support the local communities. You'd be surprised at how many things you can garner from supporting these local businesses. I mean, A, it brings goodwill to the hunting community, but B, selfishly, you get chatting up with the waiter, the waitress, or the bartender, and oh yeah, there's we got birds over here. We had a big hailstorm just north of here this year. There's not birds. Oh, I mean, you can garner a lot of really good information from locals on that stuff. And again, I like giving back to the communities that I enjoy visiting. I mean, sometimes you're in the middle of nowhere and you got no choice, and it is what it is. But if you got the opportunity, stop by those little places and meet the local folks, and you might be surprised. You might end up with a spot to hunt for life. So see if I got anything else here. So we kind of talked about all that stuff. One thing I learned the hard way is when you're out west, particularly anywhere east or west of Michigan, basically, when it rains, the roads turn to absolute crap. They're mostly clay-based roads. And if you want to tick people off, start driving on those roads because you will ruin them so fast. And you can get stuck too. I mean, they're really nasty. So on those rainy days, scout your areas judiciously on those areas. And I like I said, stay out, because if you get down one of those roads and it's a farmer's secondary road and you got to call him to pull you out, he's going to be PO'd. And it can be pretty bad. So that's kind of my little secondary thought on that. Does anybody have any questions or anything like that on traveling with your dogs? Yes.
I want your opinion, because I'm going to get one of two. A deck system for your truck or the slide out. Which one?
The truck vault? Yeah. The deck is about half the price. I think it's probably 80% as good as the truck vault. So I think, from a physical standpoint, I think the deck system is a better system than the truck vault. That being said, I've had a truck vault before deck came out. So I've got a truck vault that's, 6 years old, and they're easier to swap from your one truck to the next truck. If you're going to different trucks, you can get different parts for it and stuff like that. You're not drilling into your truck at all with the truck vault system. I do believe that you have better storage in the truck vault, because they're they're clean sidewalls. They don't, the deck system really rolls nicely because they've got rollers in there and stuff like that. But unfortunately, it takes up space. So you get a lot more space out of a truck vault. So if space is a super premium for you, you pay a little bit more to get that premium price on there. But and there's lots of do-it-yourself plans online to make those things. And I tell you what, if you're running a truck, even an SUV, build a platform, because otherwise you've got that wasted space above your kennels if you got a topper and stuff like that. It is, it's game-changing about it, the amount of crap you can bring in. We all know with bird dogs, I mean, this is just a sampling of some of the stuff I carry. It doesn't have guns, bullets, your vest, all that other stuff in there, and you can take up a lot of space quickly. So having that and having your dog kennels, sit on top of that will save you a lot of space in your truck. So I would, if anyone wants to look at my truck after, they'd be happy to show you how I've got things set up out there. But that's a great thing to do. Yes?
Do you have a sling that you take in case you need to carry your dog?
I don't. I've seen videos of guys putting dogs in their vests and stuff. I've had a couple instances where I've had dogs get, pretty bad injuries. And typically, the injuries, they're bad to us. Dogs can run on 3 legs. And if you got to carry your dog out, I feel like putting them in a game bag is the worst thing you can do. Because if you're carrying your dog out, something catastrophic probably happened to the chest of the dog. Because if they got a laceration on their arm, again, you carry some vet wrap, stuff like, that's not a big deal. I've had a dog 3 times blow their knees out in the field. Guess what? They kept hunting on 3 legs. I've had dogs take big sticks under the armpit. No sense. You don't have to carry. If they're bleeding profusely and stuff like that, I just don't. I don't feel like the sling. To me, it's like I'll break down my gun and put it back there. I'll carry my dog out before I put it in a sling. That's what I would personally do. Or I would lean my gun up against a tree, mark my GPS, and if I had to get the dog out of there that fast, I'll come back and get the gun later. Typically, I'm hunting with somebody else, so I can hand a gun off to somebody. It's not a big deal, but I'm just not a big fan of the sling stuff because again, I feel like if a dog is hurt that bad, putting any type of pressure on their internal organs is probably not. Yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
One thing I care with me is the battery operated shaver and a skin stapler.
Okay.
That's saved me a lot of time when my dog was gonna puncture wound.
Yep.
Deep enough where it's bleeding.
Yep.
But I can take and shave them and put 3 staples in them and we're good to go.
Yep, I keep a stapler in my truck too. Yep. Yep, that's a great thing. The problem I've had with dogs getting cut in the field is I've had it 3 times where they've taken something right in the armpit, and the dog vests are great, but they don't protect that area of the dog. What dog vests do for me is like if I'm hunting CRP for 4 days in a row, it just keeps that belly from getting, I run pointers and I've had short hairs and I've got one setter and their bellies just get rubbed raw. And that's what those things do a great job. I don't think that they're just not going to protect 9 times out of 10 the areas that I've had problems with dogs getting cut up. And I've tried stapling that, and I went to some country vet out in Kansas one time, and I had a dog that, just a pretty good cut on his arm. He's like, just get a garden hose, spray that thing out. And he's like, he gave me some it was like silver nitrate spray, and you just sprayed it on there. He's like, just keep hunting the dog, it'll be fine. I got home and I brought the dog to my local vet, and they're like, in the vet tech, oh my God, that dog, we got to bring this dog into surgery. I'm like, it's been 4 days. He's like, yeah, but look how bad the wound looks. I'm like, he's like, it's going to close up from the inside out and it's going to leave a bad scar. I'm like, it's a bird dog. And, I'm not cheap with my dogs, but I'm like, I'm not going to spend $500. It was the end of the season and the dog was cut. It was healing up fine. There was no infection, give the dog some antibiotics. And, you can't even see the scar at this point. It's like, dogs are a lot tougher than we get them credit for on that stuff. And I think that, at the end of the day, we have to tell them no because they'll keep going through far more than they probably should. But, there's not a lot. Most cuts and stuff like that, you really don't need to go to the vet on a lot of that stuff. You really don't. That's my theory on it at least. Any other questions? Well, thanks, Mike, for putting on this great show here. This is very informative and entertaining, and appreciate everybody coming out here. And it was Mike's birthday yesterday, so let's give him a big happy birthday.